Hi, this is Dave Cohn with Emerald Trading Technologies, and we have a short video here demonstrating how one opens up the settings form from the XTremeAutoTrader trading console and begins to set the settings for all the symbols. Now we see we have an XTremeAutoTrader trading console sitting here with three symbols loaded into it, C, GE, and IBM. And we see in the settings column displayed in red, first click here. So we can click on any one of these cells to take the next step to open up what's called the settings form. So I'll just click here. And before we look at the form, I want to point out what's happened here. As soon as you click there, you notice that all the rows change from first click here to default all. This tells us that we're going to be setting the default settings for all these symbols here in this in the settings form. So it really doesn't matter which of these cells we clicked. We're going to enter the next phase, which is setting default attributes for all symbols shown. So let's look at the form that's brought up. Now, if you have multiple monitors, this form may appear on another monitor, or it may appear in the bottom of your toolbar as a TradeStation blue arrow icon. So let me drag the form over here on top of this. And this is the form when it first starts up, and we're going to be setting defaults for all the symbols. And we see at the very top, default bar type all rows, and then finalize default settings. And then in this form, we see these various what we call subforms. They're typically labeled for what they do. Protective OCO exit bracket, which tracks the price, lost orders, mismatch, and restart. The strategies that you can run for each symbol. You can actually have up to 4 strategies running for a given symbol. Entry and exit times, controlling when the strategy trades and enters and exits for the day, say. And auto starting strategy is a very advanced feature that we'll discuss later on. But let's show an example of how we would set the default bar type for all symbols. So we click here, and up pops this bar type info subform. So we see that we start with the default of 5 minutes, which in fact is what we displayed on the trading console. But let's change that. Let's set that default to seconds. And clicking here, 10 seconds. This would in turn set the default bar type for all the symbols to be 10 seconds. And I'm going to slide this form out of the way. And we can now see that the bar type is 10 seconds. And in fact, if we had 2 different monitors we could display, as I change that form, this bar type field changes in real time. So let's go back to the form. The other thing I want to point out is if you click here, you see that we can select any of these bar types typically that you can insert on a chart. So tick, volume, daily, weekly, monthly, or any of the what we call price activity based bars. KG, KC, line break, momentum, point and figure, range, or Rinko. If you select one of these other bar types, like let's say point and figure, you notice that the whole menuing changes so that you can specify all the attributes required for point and figure bars. Also notice at the very bottom, chart history. This is where you can specify the amount of chart history that will be created. And by this, what I mean is that for each symbol to be traded, a chart is automatically created. The trading strategies are automatically inserted on the chart. And this specifies how much history will be available on the chart. This can be very important if you have a strategy that requires substantial history for calculations which run prior to the first trade. So you can control the chart history in terms of years or days here. Or if you select something like minutes, for a bar type, you can also select the number of bars on the chart. Okay, moving on to the next item. If you select any of these checkboxes, any of these subforms, this becomes the default for all symbols. Now, you can later customize that default for each symbol, but this sets the starting default. So if we wanted all symbols to be trading with protective OCO exit brackets in place, all we have to do is click this, and you notice how the color changes and highlights in green when it's checked, that we will put in place protective OCO exit brackets. When we go to later customize the settings for individual symbols, we could eliminate this for specific symbols, but this sets the default for all symbols to start with protective OCO exit brackets. Conversely, if we uncheck it, then the default is that none of the symbols start with protective OCO exit brackets. So we'll set that as a default. And then we'll come up here and click here to finalize the default settings. And now, if we come back to the trading console, we see that the settings field has changed from default all to customize. This is indicating that we are now ready to start customizing the settings for each symbol.